This one is a Huon pine block, and it's probably difficult to see in this light. Let me try and focus. But the grain on this is incredible. It's very tight. It's a very slow growing tree in this part of Tasmania in Australia. And I get these offcuts and just shaped to the block or the size that I like. And what I'm trying to achieve with these particular pieces, there's no paper. I've already primed it with a watercolor ground so that the paint can stick. What I am trying to achieve is to try and work with the pattern and with the grain. So immediately with this particular grain here, I'm thinking bushfire. That's just what's coming into my head, just because of the grain pattern of these shapes in here. I don't want to mess with it too much. I know I can do typical landscapes, but what I try and achieve is to get that grain pattern, seeing that through the painting. I find that that's really effective, and I want to try and maintain that. So my plan for this one is just to keep the paint very minimal and try and encourage it to move across the same grain pattern, but this one I want to try and keep a little bit abstract if I can. So I have just wet the brush and it's still got paint on it, so rookie mistake, that one. Let me try that again because I don't want that colour. Okay. So I've wet the brush and I'm going to go in with reds and yellows. So again, I didn't clean my brush out properly. I probably should get another paper towel. And I've got a very cool red mixed in with some orange, so it's going to accentuate the yellow of this. Okay. Like I said, I don't want to cover up that grain pattern too much, but I do want a hint of color there so that when we take the tape off, we do have that differentiation. That's a big word for this morning, between the painted part of the block and the unpainted. So what I'm doing now is I'm lifting some of that color across the grain pattern that I can see, just to keep those wooden highlights in there. So I have learnt to use very minimal water with this technique. And the reason for doing that is because it's not on watercolor paper. Because that's not what I'm working with, I don't have the flexibility of very heavy washes, but I still want that color and I still want that depth in there. But like I said, I want to keep this quite a minimal abstract feeling. Just grab the focus for you on that. So for me to be able to keep that grain pattern, I'm going to have to keep lifting, I feel, just so we can maintain that pattern that comes through. Okay. So I can tell already that I have way too much water in this mix. Okay, I like that effect where it's very gradual, very minimal effect. So I'm mixing together. That's lovely. Mixing together Paraline Violet and a very cool red. And like I said, I'm after kind of like a bushfire feeling. It's not over the top. Now mixing in some orange. So what I struggle with the most with these blocks is the balance between letting the natural beauty of the grain shine through and then coupling that with the idea of the landscape that I had when I first saw the grain. I am basing my landscapes on the grain of the wood, which is something unusual because you can't do that with paper because it's all white. And I have noticed that I have been erring on the side of caution when it comes to that. And I've typically been doing quite minimal landscapes as a result, because you can't mess with nature. It's just much better than we could ever be. It's lifting again just to accentuate some of that grain pattern and to get that feeling of flames. So with something like this, I do want to incorporate the gold in there as well, if I can. I'm going to wash that brush out and dry it very, very well. So I'm not using maybe you can see it a little bit more with the light. I'm not using a very wet brush at all. It is quite dry. And I've managed to almost wreck this brush, to be honest, because I've been scrubbing it over uneven wood. Now you can see it's quite fluffy. I'm sure I'll be able to get it back. I don't use my sable brushes on purpose because of this. I'm a bit worried about ruining them. So I use, what is it, Rose of Ink. Oh, it says Sable Flat Series. There you go. It's a sable. That's a shame. But for some reason I feel like these are can still be wrecked. Don't ask me that logic. I'll try and save them a little bit later. So I'm going to go in again with some more indigo because I want to keep that, but I do like that pattern at the bottom. That's come out really well. And I love how it's starting to creep up. So it's I'm going to stop very soon, to be honest, because I think that's enough. I don't think it needs much more. So I'll rinse out my brush. It's very quick, but it's a lot of decisions along the way. That's very important. I think that's an important thing with watercolor too, is to know when to stop. I had a bit of hair on there. I'll just try and fix that area. Okay, so now to go in with the gold. I might darken up that corner bit in the corner over there just a little bit more. Yep, just to give it more texture. That works really well. I like that. And of course, this dries different, so it will change. But again, I love how I've managed to keep those feelings of, I might change the direction of some of these so that they're a little more in that direction. Okay, so it's very subtle and you can't see it from some angles, but there is some gold flecks through the painting. I like that. It's very minimal. That's what I was after. right. So I'll take some of that off now. Whoops, I've got a cat on my lap that just nearly fell off after she woke up. Very cute though. Okay, so you can see that there is a very slight color variation. That's what I was after. I wanted that so you can feel where the painting starts and finishes, but the grain continues on. I understand that me saying grain in a very Australian way is amusing. I do pick that up occasionally at how Australian that sounds. That is just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I really like this one. This one is one of my favorites already. Goodness me. As soon as I saw the green on this, I knew what I wanted to do. Isn't that funny? Some take a little bit more thought. Okay. So I'm going to fix up some of those edges, but that I just think is so subtle and so beautiful. And just seeing that grain pattern, isn't that just delightful?